paper reports that two of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Bryant, and welcome to the Nick Bryant Podcast. I wrote a book, The Franklin Scandal, a story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal. And it was about an interstate child trafficking network that pandered children to the rich and the powerful, much like the Jeffrey Epstein network. The Franklin network was also covered up by state and federal law enforcement, just like the Jeffrey Epstein network. The Franklin network had two primary pimps, Lawrence E. King of Omaha, Nebraska, and Craig Spence of Washington, D.C. I had to embrace a number of dark, unsavory truths as I investigated the Franklin scandal. First, that a parallel universe that encompassed the refined industrial destruction of children even existed. And second, that it would be covered up by the very state and federal authorities who have pledged to protect children from the depravity of malevolent men. A third difficult truth I had to embrace was that Lawrence E. King was plundering Boys Town, the distinguished orphanage on the outskirts of Omaha for underage prostitutes. Boys Town has the facade of a pristine reputation, and although Boys Town has certainly helped a lot of children, it's harmed many children too. I ultimately found Boys Town students who had been trafficked by Lawrence E. King, and I also found Boys Town students who had been molested by Father James Kelly, a serial predator who preyed on children in upstate New York, and the Catholic Church, in its infinite wisdom, transferred him to Boys Town. Although Kelly molested many children at Boys Town, only 2 lawsuits were brought against him, and Boys Town had them dismissed because of the statute of limitations. Boys Town's response to the 2 former students was vicious. It released a report debunking the boys' allegations, and the report disclosed details of the boys' psychiatric records when they were at Boys Town. A Nebraska Senate subcommittee attempted to expose the Franklin child trafficking network, but they were rolled over by the overpowering corruption of state and federal law enforcement. The Senate subcommittee investigator, Gary Caradori, managed to create a leads list before his untimely death. The leads list, which I posted on my blog, has the names of approximately 60 alleged victims, and a number of them were former Boys Town students. I attempted to get numbers for the former Boys Town students on the leads list, but they seem to have dropped off the face of the earth. I found a number for one of the Boys Town students named Tony Harris. I phoned the number, and an elderly woman said she didn't know Tony Harris and abruptly hung up the phone, even though she was in fact the grandmother of Tony Harris. I finally managed to find a former Boys Town student on the leads list. His name was David Hill. He told me that he hadn't been flown around by Lawrence E. King when he was a Boys Town student, but he'd been molested by Father Kelly. I let David study the leads list, and he knew a number of the students who had allegedly been trafficked by Lawrence E. King. He and Tony Harris had been friends, and David ultimately put me in touch with Tony, who lived in Kansas City. I met Tony in Kansas City, and the following is the interview I conducted with him. Okay, this is Nick Bryant. It's December 30th, and I'm interviewing Tony Harris. He's a former student at Boys Town. He's 40 years old. And what year did you graduate, Tony?
I graduated in 1981.
And how many years did you go to Boys Town?
I went to Boys Town for 3.5 years.
And in that period, you met a gentleman named Larry King.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And how did you meet Larry King?
Well, I met Larry King. It was by chance. I was kind of hanging out with Fred Carter, and he said, well, do you want to go with me? And I said, sure, we're going to party and whatnot. And so we went with him. I went with Fred Carter, and then that's how I ended up meeting Larry King.
Mm-hmm. And did Larry King eventually recruit you?
He attempted to recruit me. I was sort of like part-time basis. I wasn't really anything consistent because my athleticness and everything like that, I was more into that than really partying at the particular time. So I was a part-time so-called worker.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever fly with Larry King anywhere?
Yes. Well, see, I never flew alone per se with Larry King.
Mm-hmm.
It was always more times than none with Fred. And that's how, we flew. And mainly it was to,
Where did you fly? Do you remember?
the only place just to Washington. That was it.
Washington, D.C.?
Yes, that was the only place that I ever flew. Any other places, I mean, there was times and opportunities that I had a chance, but like I said, once again, because of my athletics and things of that nature, I turned down a lot of flights to go and to party and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now, when you would fly somewhere, what would happen?
basically, he would fly us. We would go to nice places or people's houses, sometimes hotels, and there would be gentlemen there. There would be ladies there, mainly men,
Mm-hmm.
and basically the impression that I was under was, these gentlemen like to meet you, to hang out and party with you, and things of that nature. But other than that, those are type of the places we would go.
And then he paid you for going to these places?
Yes, he did. He paid very well, very
Yeah.
well.
And then you were expected to perform like sexual
acts with gentlemen.
Yeah. And do you know what kind of gentlemen these were?
From what I can tell, I mean, appearances can be deceiving, but from the appearance, well-distinguished gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Nice suits, jewelry, tailor-made clothing, things of that nature, which would lead you to believe that they were high society type men.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get away from Boys Town to do this?
Basically, mainly for me, it wasn't that difficult because me being so-called the elite class in Boys Town, very well known, very popular, the oldest one in the house, and ready to graduate, I could get away with a lot of things that some of the younger students could, and go places and get away with things that they weren't able to.
But we're talking like you'd be gone for the weekend.
Right. At various times, yes. Mainly, it was just I don't know specifically how per se, but how it was arranged. Sometimes Fred Carter would come over and talk to my house parents,
Mm-hmm.
and they figure, well, he's the mayor. He has this quote unquote this social status. So if I left with him, he would be in good hands and things of that nature. So,
Do you think that now? Was Val Peter there when you were there?
yes, Val Peter was there when I was there. Father Hupp had left, I think, either in my junior year or beginning of senior year.
Okay. So on these junkets that you took, were there, so there were always other Boys Town kids there?
Sometimes there were,
And sometimes there weren't?
and sometimes there weren't.
How many kids would you say on average would be on one of these flights?
Gosh, maybe anywhere from 5 to 10, maybe even more, but I would say at least 5 to 10, easily.
And would you say like half of them would generally be Boys Town kids, or?
Yeah, about half, yeah.
And how do you know how these other kids were able to?
No, see now once again, I wasn't too much concerned, and it's not that I didn't ask the questions, but oh, here's a Boys Town alumni, or a fellow Boys Town student. Okay, well then you must have that privilege where you can go out also, and so for that, I didn't really, question. I just, oh hey, here's a fellow Boys Town. Hey, it's cool because if you have familiarity as far as the face and whatnot, you put more at ease and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And now, how much would King give you for like one of these junkets? Do you remember?
There's times where minimum I would get 100, maybe even up to 5.
Uh-huh. And like these people that you'd meet, these men that you'd meet, like in Washington, would they give you any money, or was that all done through Larry King?
Most of it was, from what I can understand, most of it was already somewhat prearranged, but sometimes, depending on how you perform, there'd be gratuities, I gather, on the side, so.
And how did Larry King strike you? What kind of a person was he?
Well-mannered, distinguished gentleman, somewhat businesslike, very intuitive towards a lot of things, somewhat kind of like lived a lavish or outlandish lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And now, when you said if you performed well, like what would that? What is that?
Well, sexual acts, and most of them were. I'll be honest with you. It was the men that wanted to be with me. It's not so much I had to have sex with them and things of that nature, but they would like things done to them sexually, or they would like to do things to me sexually.
Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think that this was never exposed at Boys Town?
Well, as far as I was concerned, and maybe I can speak for some of the others, it's just that you were compensated very well to keep it hush-hush, things of that nature, and, because of that and being involved, you got a lot of perks being out at Boys Town.
If you were dealing with Larry King, you got a lot of perks?
Pretty much, yes. Yeah.
So then, so that was coming from the hierarchy of Boys Town?
I would say yes, but I can't be definite about it. I mean, the only thing I can say, just from seeing and hearing everything, I would say yes, it was coming from the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. So.
And Fred Carter was also on these junkets with you?
At various times, yes. Yeah. He was, I would say, a major. He was like he was like a recruiter, and like I said, familiarity would always put a person at ease, and and also being compensated, that would always say, okay, hey, I got a fellow student here. If he's going for whatever the reason is, until you do know, and even afterwards, he's cool. Plus, you're being compensated, and plus, you're getting to do things that other students wouldn't be able to do. and so
So you got a lot of perks. You got perks at Boys Town, and then you got money too coming in.
right.
And that was primarily the way that they got kids involved is through the perks and also the money.
Right.
And do you know if there was ever an attempt to expose any of this?
I wouldn't say there was an attempt, but there was various times when, as far as myself, I just said, well, look, there's a lot of this going on. I mean, because it eventually got to the point with me where I'm saying, I'd love to do this, go hang out and party, but, I have other things, another future for myself. And keep it in mind, it became so lucrative in the sense that I said to myself that there's bound to be repercussions. How, when, I'm not sure, but there's bound to be repercussions. In order to save face, I'm going to, disembowel myself from you guys, hey.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime that I needed, help or money or anything of that nature, I know what I would have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, other than that, I just figured that eventually it would come to head or to light. When I wasn't for sure, though.
Now, when you get to Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
would you be taken to a hotel, or would the king had a house in Washington, D.C.?
Well, we went to houses. I don't know if they was his or not. Yes, we did go to hotels. It would seem like it was like a gathering, where they would have a suite or something of that nature. So it wasn't so much as where the person would think, well, you're in a one-on-one situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a group, and everyone's happy-go-lucky, you'll feel more at ease.
Mm-hmm.
You would be more in tune to doing this and that, and plus seeing the gratuities that come with it, it would just more and more, incline you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as Larry King having a house, I'm not too sure if it was his house or whatnot, but yes, we did go to houses in prominent areas in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And did you kind of get the vibe that these were like big-time politicians that you were?
Not so much, a politician or a lawyer. It's just that I knew that, these gentlemen were of the upper echelon, very, very prominent type people. Now, how prominent, at that particular time, I wasn't for sure.
So how did it work? Now, there would be you and a bunch of kids.
Mm-hmm.
That king would fly in. You'd be at a house. Would a politician choose, or would one of the gentlemen choose you, or how did that work?
I would imagine some of them did pick and choose, but mainly it was, you're in there and, you're socializing and whatnot. And sometimes, as well as if you're in a bar scene, not so much you, but they would pick and choose, and they would just kind of mingle over and, start conversation, things of that nature. And then from there, you may be offered some type of gratuity, what it may be, could be anything, but
through Larry King or through the men?
And see, like I'm saying, to me, it was already set up.
Mm-hmm.
Basically Larry King, I'm not saying he said this, but this is the impression I was under. Mm-hmm. Larry King already set it up. And basically the men already knew the deal. They had their little deal. Arrangement. Anything beyond that was on the gentleman. Mm-hmm. Okay, but other than that, they already had a deal. So you got compensated that way. And if the gentleman wanted to compensate, that was by his choice.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then after that, and then you'd be flown back to Omaha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And these were generally private jets?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
nice ones too.
Nice ones?
Yeah, very nice.
And like, there'd be Larry King and then the kids. And then who else would accompany? You remember?
I can't really remember, but at various times, I know there were, I'm not definite, but there were times where I thought there were house parents that were there, and they would go also. Some, not a lot, but some did, yeah.
Can you remember the house parents that went at this point?
No, I mean, because like I said, I didn't know them all, but I knew that there were some house parents that did go just from seeing them. Now, knowing that they were house parents as far as names, no, because there were house parents there that I knew were house parents, but didn't know them per se personally as far as last names, or somewhat even first names. But there were house parents.
And they were obviously getting compensated too.
I would imagine so. Yeah. I mean, if you want to keep things on a hush-hush level, you have to be compensated somehow. Otherwise, you could be compensated still and turn the trick on,
And so you went to Boys Town 4 years, right?
3.5.
3.5.
From January 18, 1978 to May 24th, 1981.
And when did you start doing this? Wait.
Roughly in my junior year. Yeah.
And did when you went on these junkets, did you stop doing them when you left Boys Town?
When I left, yes. I mean, because I wasn't into that, and it was only primarily done for compensation. Otherwise, when I left Boys Town, that was it. I've been to establishments that were, gay and whatnot, but only because of friends that went there I met throughout life and whatnot. But otherwise, I didn't participate in any, man-on-man activities, sexual thereof.
So, looking back at that, you felt that you were extremely exploited.
Oh, yes, very much so. But, at that particular time, being with, a fellow student and saying, hey, look what I have. This is what you can have. And I'm like, okay, but, this isn't my thing. I'm not too comfortable with it. I don't like doing it. But because I'm being compensated very well, I'll go along with it.
So you could make up to like $500.
And probably even more.
Over the course of a weekend.
Oh,
Would
yeah.
it generally be like, would they get you out like on Friday and return you on Sunday? Is that how it generally went?
Pretty much, yeah. Now, some people, I would say, and I don't want to blame it all on Fred, but Fred, he had it made. He had it made. And I'm going to tell you, drugs were involved, So, and...
So they would give you what kind of drugs?
Well, for me, mainly, it was just marijuana, and there was a little snorting of cocaine, But
they were readily available to any of the kids.
Yeah, readily available to all who was there,
And did you ever see any of the guys that you had sex with? Did you ever see them on television or anything like that? Is there any where you like you saw like a politician or a famous person, you went, hey, I think I remember that guy?
If I did, I mean, I can't remember if I did, but I will say honestly, there might have been times where I thought I recognized, but
But you just
I wasn't for sure.
Okay.
I wasn't for sure.
And now with the Boys Town hierarchy, so it was basically Fred Carter would just tell how did you they're going to be gone a weekend. I mean, who would?
Well,
That's just strange to me that they.
now that you mention it, it was taken care of. How exactly, I'm not too sure. But in my particular case, there was times when I could leave with my girlfriend, and be gone for the whole weekend, and there would be no quorums. And at various times, if my house parents knew it was with Fred Carter, from what I can understand, when Fred came around, they knew it was okay. Now, how and why, I don't know. But it was taken care of that I could leave when Fred came around. And when he did, they knew I'd be gone for the weekend. And bam. Now, as far as did anyone talk to my house parents and whatnot, I don't know. But I do know this, that when Fred came around, it was okay.
And do you think that, looking back on it,
And let me give you another reason why. Because when I first came to Boys Town, you know who the very first person I met? Fred Carter. It was Fred Carter in the middle school at that particular time. And then one day, when they were converting from multiple staff teachers to the family house parent, giving them a family orientation, I went to stay in Fred's house. And, him showing me around in the middle school when I got there, that's how I kind of knew Fred Carter and knew, well, hey, he's kind of prominent among the school peers and the staff. And so that's how Fred and I became to know one another. And, I always wondered, well, dang, he has it made. And so, we was just talking one day, and then, he just said, hey, you want to go with me one weekend? And boom, that's how it started.
and then you met Larry King. That was for the first time. And how did that happen? You met him like at a party or at an airport, or?
It was a house in Washington.
That was the first. You were flown there.
I was with Fred. We left in a plane, went up to D.C., and Larry King was at this house. Fred said, hey, this is Larry King. We talked and everything. And the first time I went, I was just there as an observer, so to speak. But I was compensated. Next time, Larry King and Fred Carter, we all sat down and said, well, hey, you can be compensated this. These gentlemen just want to meet you, hang out, this and that. And, they may want to just, take you here, take you there, and just hang out with you. And I said, okay. So then when Fred, and I kind of, as he was trying to reel me in for the punchline, he said, hey, they may want to, have sexual encounters with you, but you'll be compensated very well, And he said, you really don't have to do anything you want, but if you do, you'll be compensated very well. And I'm saying, okay. So, it wasn't just overnight that I did. They reeled me in, baited me, and then, so.
And do you think that Fred Carter performed this function on other kids too?
Pretty much. I'm sure he did, because.
So you think that he was like King's point man? And
he was very prominent, as far as Larry King's somewhat organization, as far as Boys Town kids are concerned.
And how would the drugs be supplied?
I don't basically know how. All I know, they were there.
Always there.
Always there, any given time, and
And were these distinguished gentlemen, were they also doing the drugs too?
Some of them, yes.
Yeah.
Some of them. They, most of them, they didn't do so much marijuana. They did a lot of snorting of cocaine.
Yeah.
See, me, I didn't like it too much because, once again, it was athletics. You know, I hated pretty much anything going in my system. I didn't even start drinking until I graduated from high school. And there's been plenty of times I was at parties, I just didn't like the taste of beer. Matter of fact, any kind of liquor. So I just smoked marijuana.
Did any authorities ever talk to you about this?
No.
No.
None. Mainly because one, like I said, I got out. Not so much that I got out, but I just wasn't too keen on doing this because of athletics. And so I just said, well, look, Fred, hey, I would love to, but, I want to do other things in life, and this is all fine, what's going on and me being compensated, but that's just not me.
But if you were kind of broke, you would, at that point,
Oh,
you
yeah.
could still do
Oh,
it.
I knew I knew the first thing, if I needed money, I can go right there.
And how often would they get kids out of Boys Town? Would you say like every other weekend or once a month? Or?
It varies. It varies because some of them who liked it, loved it, they did it more than some who somewhat liked it, and then some did it one time and
And that was it.
Yeah. Me, I did it at various times. I wasn't, to me, on my average, it was probably like once a month on the average. Once a month. Because I wasn't too keen. Like I said, I had other things and better things to do.
And when you look back at that, are you upset that Boys Town allowed that to happen?
I'm not too sure if I can say I was upset or anything. It's just that I look back and say that there was a lot of things that went on that a lot of people knew that went on, but was never said. And it's not my place really to judge or anything of that nature, but I do think back and I look at it, I'm saying, well, there's a lot of kids that have been sexually exploited, and some of them may have an adverse effect on their life and mentality later down the line. Now, me, because my earlier upbringing, not having a father, this and that, it didn't really so much bother me. But, basically, it happened in not my immediate family, but my mother's family as far as something similar to this, and I wasn't a part of that. But it didn't affect me as much as some of the other kids, if it did at all. To me, it was just...
But you definitely felt you were exploited.
Oh, yeah. Piece of meat. Hey, these gentlemen would pay you for a sexual encounter, or someone would pay you basically for a sexual encounter. And, hey.
But isn't it kind of shocking that Boys Town, I mean, this sacred place for children, Father Flanagan's Boys Town?
Well, yeah.
And it's just like there's this, oh,
yeah,
jet stream right to Washington, D.C., and you get exploited by...
It's amazing how relatively easy it was, yeah, for
them to get away with it.
Well, I'm not saying so much to get away with it, but for it to happen, period. I can see how it happened, but to see how it continues for so long, that's what's amazing to me.
That it's never come out.
It's never came out, really. Throughout all the years, and keeping in tune with Boys Town, this and that, it never has surfaced. No one has ever wrote a book about Boys Town. And what I mean by that, because I even thought about, hey, writing a book about Boys Town. The things you didn't know about Boys Town that happens in Boys Town. Because you paint this facade, that's all well and dandy, but that's just the surface. What you really need to is get to the core. And there's a lot of things that happen in the core in Boys Town that is not right.
Now, on these flights, there were, you said at times there were like 5 or even 10 Boys Town kids?
Yeah, and there were other kids there too. And To me, it was just the norm. It was just a few of us were selected because I guess for whatever reason, because of prominence, being in Boys Town, it was okay for prominent Boys Town students to go because they had the clout within their house. Plus, if Fred said, hey, he's one, and sometimes there were probably some that was marginal, but, even being marginal, if Fred thought it was okay, boom, you were in. You were in.
And do you think Val Peter knew about any of this?
I'm not sure, but I would fail to believe that if he didn't, because and it might stem from like I said, Fred, because like I said, if Fred knew, somebody higher than him had to know. Now, I haven't really dealt with Father Peters that much, but I would not put it past that he didn't know, honestly.
And now Fred was mayor of Boys Town.
Yes. I think he was mayor. He was mayor longer than, from my time frame, from 1978 to at least 80, he was mayor. Now, I don't know why, but it was said that Fred had to step down. Not that so much he didn't want to run, he's been running too much and he had to give someone else a chance. I heard through the grapevine that Fred had to step down from being mayor. Now, why? I really don't know.
Now, who would have made him step down?
The only person that I can think of would be Father Peters. Because, even though the kids elected somewhat the mayor, he had his say as far as who would be the mayor.
And this is Stillwell Hupp was supposed to be the
right
mayor.
Father, like I said, Father Hupp was there, and see, at that particular time, Father Hupp, I thought he was a well-liked gentleman, but when he left and Father Peters came in, things did change. How so? I can't really pinpoint it, but things did change, and that's when, more or less, it was said that Fred had to step down. Now, maybe it was because of Father Peters and because of things that Fred did, this and that. I'm not sure, but I know he had to step down, and I know Father Peters had to have something to do with it. I can't put facts to it, but I would not doubt it.
Okay. And looking back on this whole thing, would you like to see it exposed at this point?
I would love to see it exposed, but the one thing, I have a connection with Boys Town, and it's not just because I graduated. It's Boys Town's very, very well known. A lot of centers, girls' home, boys' home, they emulate Boys Town because Boys Town is so-called the standard. And for that reason, I would not want to tarnish its good people, its good program, but yet and still the things that go on behind the door, yes, I would love for it to be brought out and put a stop to it, because what's on the outside is fine and dandy, but to get to the heart of the matter, and with students, is what's on the inside, and that'll affect kids, boys and girls, down the line. Because I'm sure that there's things going on there now that is not of the norm. Because when I was in my senior year, they had just brung in the first 5 girls. And then, here's the thing. Among those 5 girls, a fellow student in my house was dating one of them and was having sex with her. And, they tried, to put a stop to that. But, once you leave campus, anything goes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many ways to leave that campus. You could basically walk off the campus
Mm-hmm.
and, boom. And like me, my girlfriend would come and pick me up and I'd leave.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Did your girlfriend or your parents, did they know about what was going on at Boys Town with you being flown to Washington?
No.
You ever talk about that?
No. Never talked about it with never. Never. My girlfriend don't even know to this very day.
Mm-hmm.
And my house parents do not know to this very day. At least they do not know from me.
Mm-hmm.
But if they know, okay, they know. But they don't know from me. I the only people that I really spoke to about this was Fred Carter. And, I think, I'm not too sure, but I think Fred left. I'm not sure if Fred even really graduated.
He did.
Yeah, but I don't think he walked across the stage and everything. I'm not sure. See, and like I said, I think Fred left early or did something, but Fred wasn't there at one particular time. Now, where he went and when, I don't know.
Yeah, I think he did graduate.
He might have graduated, but, there was a point in time where I didn't see Fred. And what happened, I don't know. So that's why I said, I don't know if he really even graduated. Now, he probably did graduate, but as far as I know, Fred and I was the same year, or he might have been a year ahead of me, or a year behind me. And I don't recall.
I think Fred was 81, but I'm not
Well, if Fred was 81, he didn't graduate with me.
Do you remember a kid named Bryant Clark?
Yeah.
Do you remember him coming on junkets with you?
Vaguely.
Vaguely?
Vaguely. He was, I guess, special. Because, he was able to do a lot of things that I couldn't even do.
Bryant Clark.
Yeah. So, like I said, when it was my time in there, the younger classmen, I didn't really pay too much attention to, and the older classmen I didn't. It was mainly who was in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And, so the younger, there were younger ones, or lower classmen and upperclassmen, but I didn't really key on them too much.
What was the youngest kid that went on these jackets? Do you remember?
I don't know. All I know is that, basically from the 9th to 12th grade that was there, or
So
say
basically
14, 15, on up to 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you can think of? That time?
Believe me, I think that it should be exposed, and that, I don't like to tarnish the Boys Town name, because it can help a lot of students, a lot of kids.
But you'd like to see it fixed.
Yes, I like that hush-hush stuff brought out and stopped, because, it didn't have no effect on me. Maybe it did unconsciously, but consciously, that was a part of life that, hey, I don't even worry about, think about. And, like I said, you're the first person, that I've talked to about this ever since graduating. Mm-hmm. You are the first. Otherwise, I put it in the back of my mind, and it's not so much I was compensated to keep quiet or whatnot, but like I said, I had a different agenda. That was okay for that time being, and it's not something I'm proud of or want to do, so I just...
What about that? Were you ever threatened?
The only thing I would say as far as any type of promise of a threat was, you do not want to discuss this with no one. And if you did, there would be consequences. What type, I was not told, but the one thing that I did gather from that being told to me was, it would be to your advantage not to.
And who told you that?
Fred and Larry. But they did it in a very subtle way to make me really think about that, if you do tell, it'll all be denied and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you did tell, there may be some consequences there that may be out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just said, oh, well,
Consequences out of our control, like?
What? I'm not sure. Because it was never stated.
Mm-hmm.
It was stated in such a precise way where, if it ever came to court, you wasn't really threatened, was you? Was it ever said that, you would be killed, bodily harm? No. Mm-hmm. So it was done very strategically.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. I really